Hello, friend. Welcome to Science for Sleep. Whether you have returned for another quiet evening, or you are discovering this channel for the first time, this is a gentle place to slow the pace, learn something peaceful, and allow the day to slowly fade into the background. Tonight, we are spending time with one of the most recognizable birds on Earth, the peacock. The familiar image begins with a male standing on open ground. Behind him, a bundle of long feathers starts to rise. The feathers spread outward until they form a broad fan, covered with more than 100 eye-shaped markings. Blue, green, bronze, and gold move across the surface as the bird shifts beneath the light. It is an impressive sight, but nearly every part of it is more complicated than it first appears. To begin, the word peacock has a specific meaning. A peacock is the adult male. The female is called a peahen. Young birds are sometimes called peachicks, and the name peafowl refers to the group as a whole. In everyday speech, people often call every one of these birds a peacock, but only the males grow the enormous display that made the name famous. The species most people picture is the Indian peafowl, known scientifically as Pavo cristatus. It is native to the Indian subcontinent and Sri Lanka, although people have carried it to many other parts of the world. An adult male can weigh roughly 4 to 6 kilograms. His wings may stretch between about 1.4 and 1.6 meters from tip to tip. When the long display feathers are fully grown, his total length can reach more than 2 meters. Much of that length trails behind a body that is sturdy, muscular, and built for life close to the ground. A peacock spends far more time walking than flying. He searches through grass, fallen leaves, farm edges, and patches of open woodland. He eats seeds, shoots, fruit, insects, and small animals. He watches the ground around him, listens for warning calls, and moves toward cover when danger appears. If you enjoy these quiet journeys, you're welcome to subscribe. And if it feels natural, to leave a comment sharing where you're listening from tonight. It helps others find this calm corner of science, one sleepy listener at a time. The peacock's daily life creates an immediate puzzle. A bird that walks through plants and feeds on the ground would seem to benefit from being compact, quiet, and difficult to notice. Instead, the adult male grows a structure longer than the rest of his body. It catches sunlight. It brushes against grass. It reveals his position from a great distance. During courtship, he lifts it into the air and shakes it again and again. This does not mean the train makes the peacock helpless. The bird can still run with surprising speed. When necessary, broad wings and powerful chest muscles can lift him into a tree, onto a wall, or across a short stretch of open ground. At dusk, peafowl often leave the ground and settle on high branches, where many predators are less able to reach them. The heavy-looking display has therefore not erased the bird's ability to survive. It exists alongside strong legs, quick reactions, capable wings, sharp vision, and a flexible diet. That balance is one of the central facts behind the peacock. Evolution does not build an ornament in isolation. Every feather must be grown by the same body that must find food, avoid injury, escape predators, and remain healthy enough to reproduce. Energy used to produce one structure cannot be used somewhere else at the same moment. Protein placed into a meter-long feather must first come from food. Muscles that raise the display must be carried throughout the day. Time spent calling and presenting the fan is time during which the bird is easier to notice. The train survived across generations because its benefits during reproduction were large enough to exist beside those demands. Even the word tail can lead us slightly astray. The giant fan is not formed mainly from the peacock's true tail feathers. Most of it is made from another group of feathers that have become extremely long. The smaller true tail remains underneath, helping support the display when it rises. So the familiar peacock is already becoming a different animal from the one suggested by a simple picture. It is a strong ground bird carrying a temporary structure made from modified feathers, built at great size, colored through unusual physical processes, and used in a carefully controlled performance. And even this remarkable version is only one form produced by the small peafowl family, whose members live across 3 very different parts of the world. The widest familiar range belongs to the Indian peafowl, known scientifically as Pavo cristatus. Its natural home stretches across much of the Indian subcontinent, from Pakistan and India, through Nepal and Bangladesh, with another native population on the island of Sri Lanka. Within that broad region, the birds occupy more than one kind of landscape. They move through open woodland, dry scrub, grassy clearings, farm edges, and village surroundings where trees still provide safe night roosts. Adult males carry the deep blue neck, upright crest, and enormous eye-spotted train most people associate with a peacock. Females look very different. An Indian peahen has a brown and grey body, a greenish lower neck, and no full ornamental train. Her quieter colours blend more easily with dry grass and leaf litter, especially when she is sitting on a ground nest. Farther east, a second species carries the same basic peafowl shape into a different part of Asia. The green peafowl, Pavo muticus, once occupied a wide belt from northeastern India through Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, southern China, and the island of Java. Its remaining populations are now scattered across a much smaller part of that former range. A male green peafowl still grows a long train, although the rest of his appearance differs from the Indian male. His neck and breast are covered with overlapping green and bronze feathers that create a scaled pattern. Light moving across those feathers can reveal blue, copper, and yellow-green tones. The crest rises in a narrow, upright bundle rather than ending in the wider fan carried by Indian peafowl. Green peahens resemble the males more closely than Indian peahens resemble Indian peacocks. They have shorter trains and less extreme ornament, yet much of the green and bronze body color appears in both sexes. That difference gives scientists a useful comparison. Related species can divide color and ornament between males and females in different ways, even when their bodies still share the same basic plan. Green peafowl often depend on landscapes containing dry forest, open grassy patches, riverbanks, and dependable access to water. Many surviving groups need large areas with relatively little hunting and disturbance. Dense settlement, roads, farms, and forest clearing have separated populations that once formed a much broader chain across Southeast Asia. The family's third living member appears thousands of kilometers away, inside the forests of Central Africa. The Congo peafowl, Afropavo congensis, lives only in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. Its range lies within the Congo Basin, one of the largest tropical forest regions on Earth. A male Congo peafowl has rich blue, green, and dark violet plumage, along with a crest of pale, hair-like feathers. His body is shorter and more compact than that of the great Asian males. Most importantly, he carries no enormous fan of long, eye-spotted cover feathers. His tail is much shorter, and courtship occurs within a forest, where trunks, leaves, and heavy shade limit how far a display can be seen. That shorter design changes the way the whole family must be understood. A giant train is one possible peafowl feature rather than a requirement of peafowl identity. All three species retain strong legs, rounded wings, crests, ground-feeding habits, and a body related to pheasants. Their ornaments have traveled along different evolutionary paths. Open ground gives a tall fan room to rise and catch light across a distance. Broken woodland allows a displaying male to remain visible while still keeping cover nearby. A dark rainforest places different limits on color, movement, and the distance over which another bird can receive a signal. Over many generations, inherited differences that worked well within each setting became more common. Courtship helped shape those differences, while food, predators, vegetation, and safe roosts set practical boundaries around them. The blue Indian peacock, therefore, represents one branch of a small and varied family. Its famous display grew within a particular mixture of open space, female attention, seasonal breeding, and ordinary survival. Beneath the colors and the different feather shapes, each species still carries the sturdy construction of a bird that spends most of its waking life on the ground. Seen up close, an Indian peacock has the solid body of a bird, built to spend most of its day on foot. Peafowl belong to an order of birds called galliformes. This group includes turkeys, pheasants, junglefowl, partridges, and chickens. Most galliform birds have sturdy bodies, strong legs, and broad wings suited to quick bursts of power. Indian peafowl belong more specifically to the pheasant family, known as Phasianidae. Their nearest familiar relatives include the red junglefowl of South and Southeast Asia, the wild ancestor of the domestic chicken. A peacock's legs are long and muscular, lifting the body well above the ground. Each foot has 3 main toes pointing forward and a smaller toe behind. The spread of those toes helps support the bird on soil, grass, loose leaves, and uneven branches. Males also carry pointed spurs on the backs of their legs. These hard growths can be used during fights with other males, especially when display territories are being defended. For most of the day, the legs perform the work of travel. A peafowl walks steadily while searching for seeds, fallen fruit, insects, and tender plant growth. Its feet can scratch aside dry leaves or loose earth, exposing beetles and other small animals underneath. When danger appears nearby, the bird may lower its body and run rapidly toward thick cover. The long train folds into a narrow bundle behind the male during ordinary movement. Its tips may brush the ground, but the bird's raised body and long stride keep much of the structure clear of its feet. Flight remains available when running is no longer enough. A peacock's wings are rounded and broad, with large flight muscles attached to the breastbone. those muscles can produce a sudden burst of force. The first wing beats are heavy and loud as the bird lifts its body and train away from the ground. Peafowl do not normally use this ability for long migrations covering hundreds or thousands of kilometers. Their flight usually lasts for a much shorter distance. A bird may cross a stream, clear a fence, reach the roof of a building, or rise into the branches of a tree. Short flights require high power at the beginning, because the bird must quickly overcome its own weight. Long-distance birds face a different challenge. Migrating geese and albatrosses benefit from wings shaped for efficient travel over many hours. A peacock's broad wings favor rapid takeoff and strong climbing over smooth cruising. That difference suits an animal that finds most of its food on the ground, but still needs access to safety above it. As daylight fades, peafowl often gather near familiar roosting areas. The chosen tree may stand beside a clearing, a river, farmland, or the edge of a village. Some birds use several branches on the way upward, flying from a low perch to a higher one in stages. Others launch directly toward a strong limb several meters above the ground. An elevated roost reduces the chance of being reached by many predators that hunt at ground level. The open space around a tall tree can also make an approaching animal easier to detect. A peafowl resting on a branch still faces danger from climbing predators or large birds of prey, but height changes the balance in its favor. Before dawn, the birds descend and return to walking routes used for feeding and water. This daily movement reveals what the peafowl body is mainly designed to do. Its legs provide steady travel across land. Broad wings supply brief, powerful escape and access to high roosts. A compact chest holds the muscles needed to lift a bird that may weigh several kilograms. The enormous display has been added to that practical frame without replacing it. Beneath the train, the peacock carries a much smaller set of true tail feathers. These feathers help with balance, steering, and control during movement. They also form part of the support that raises the display during courtship. The giant fan seen from the front comes from a different layer of plumage growing above them. Those feathers began with an ordinary covering job before evolution stretched them far beyond their original size. The smaller feathers beneath the display are called rectrices. These are the peacock's true tail feathers. They extend directly from the tail and are firmer than the long decorative feathers resting above them. During flight, rectrices help the bird steer, slow down, and adjust its balance. On the ground, they remain mostly hidden beneath the much larger structure people usually call the tail. The feathers above them belong to a different group. They are known as upper tail coverts. In most birds, coverts form a smooth layer over the bases of larger feathers. They protect the area where feathers meet the skin and help air move cleanly across the body during flight. A typical upper tail covert is modest in size. In male Indian and green peafowl, evolution has enlarged many of these feathers until they extend far beyond the true tail. Together, the elongated coverts form the train. This distinction becomes easier to see when a male is viewed from behind, with the display folded. The true tail forms a short, stiff foundation near the body. The train lies over it in a long bundle that reaches toward the ground. When the male begins displaying, muscles at the base of the tail rotate the true tail upward. The long coverts rise with it and spread outward, Each feather occupies a particular place within the fan. The train contains shorter feathers near its lower edges and much longer ones toward the upper and central regions. This range of lengths produces the broad circular outline seen from the front. If every feather had grown to the same length, the top of the fan would form a narrow line. Instead, the graduated arrangement fills a large area from the ground to well above the male's head. The feathers also overlap. A feather near the front can cover part of one behind it, much like roof shingles covering the row below. Overlapping helps create a continuous surface even though the train contains many separate pieces. Small gaps remain between the fine branches of each feather, allowing light and air to pass through. The train, therefore, has a large visible area without carrying the weight of a solid wall. Many mature train feathers carry an eye-shaped marking near their outer end. These markings are called ocelli. The singular form is ocellus. The name comes from a Latin word meaning a small eye. An ocellus contains several bands of color arranged around a darker center. Depending on the angle of light, one marking may show deep blue, green, bronze, violet, or nearly black areas. The eye spots are spread across the train in curved rows. Their positions follow the different lengths and attachment points of the feathers beneath them. A fully developed adult male commonly carries well over 100 visible ocelli. Counts vary among individuals because of age, growth, feather loss, and natural differences in the train. In studied adult populations, the highest totals have often fallen near 165 to 170 eye spots. A younger male usually has fewer complete markings and a shorter train. His display becomes fuller through later growth cycles as he approaches mature breeding condition. Even a large adult fan remains much lighter than its size suggests. Feathers contain keratin arranged around hollow or partly hollow spaces. The central shaft provides stiffness while keeping mass low. Smaller branches extend from the shaft and divide again into even finer parts. This branching design creates width without requiring a heavy sheet of tissue. The support beneath the train still has to manage substantial leverage. A long feather places much of its mass far from the body, increasing the turning force at its base. The shorter rectrices brace the train as it rises. Muscles around the tail and lower back hold the display upright, while the bird adjusts its angle toward a nearby female. The visible fan is therefore the outer surface of a layered mechanical system. Decorated coverts provide height, color, and pattern. The true tail supplies a firm support beneath them. Skin, joints, and muscles connect the whole structure to the body. Evolution produced this system by changing the length, shape, and arrangement of feathers that were already present in the peafowl body plan. No new limb or separate organ was required. Ordinary covering feathers gradually became an enormous courtship display. Their material remains temporary. A feather can be cleaned and straightened, but a broken shaft cannot heal like bone or skin. After months of use, the train is shed. The male's body must then grow the entire structure again from living follicles beneath the skin. Each long covert begins beneath the skin inside a narrow pocket called a follicle. The follicle is living tissue. As a new feather starts growing, blood carries oxygen, amino acids, minerals, and other nutrients into its developing base. At this stage, The feather is sometimes called a blood feather because a supply of blood still runs through the central area. The growing shaft remains soft at first. New material is added from the base, pushing the feather farther outward while its branching structure forms inside a protective covering. When growth is complete, the blood supply retreats. The outer feather hardens into keratin, a strong structural protein also found in claws, scales, human hair, and fingernails. The finished feather feels light because much of its structure contains hollow or partly hollow spaces. Its central shaft provides support. Finer branches spread outward to create the broad surface that catches light and moves through air. Once the exposed feather has matured, living tissue no longer reaches through its full length. That limits what the bird can repair. A peacock can preen the train by drawing feathers through his bill and straightening the tiny branches that have slipped apart. Oil from a gland near the base of the tail can be spread across the plumage during this cleaning. Preening helps remove dust, loose material, and some parasites while keeping neighboring feather parts aligned. A badly cracked shaft cannot seal itself again. Frayed edges may remain uneven. A broken eye spot does not grow back from the damaged tip. The solution arrives through molt, the natural process in which old feathers are released and replaced by new growth. Indian peacocks carry their most complete trains during the breeding season. The exact timing changes with local climate and rainfall, but males usually shed the train after the main period of courtship. A mature train may reach around 1.5 meters from its base to the longest feather. Later in the year, the same male may carry only short new growth where the finished fan once rested. The change can be striking. A bird that recently appeared more than 2 meters long becomes much more compact after the old coverts fall away. Each lost feather leaves its follicle ready for another cycle. The replacement does not emerge at full length. It extends gradually from the skin while new keratin is deposited at the base. Growing feathers remain vulnerable during this stage. Damage near the blood supply can cause bleeding, and the developing structure requires protection until it hardens. The train also changes across the first years of a male's life. Young peachicks of both sexes begin with muted down and practical juvenile plumage. As males mature, blue and green body colors become stronger, while the upper tail coverts lengthen through later molts. A young male may raise a small display long before he possesses the height, density, and number of complete eye spots seen in an older adult. Successive growth cycles produce a fuller train. The pattern depends on age, health, food supply, season, and the condition of individual follicles. A missing or damaged feather can leave a visible gap until the next replacement develops. Building the fan requires a steady supply of raw material. Keratin contains amino acids, the smaller units from which proteins are assembled. Those amino acids must come from food or from materials already circulating within the body. Blood must deliver them to hundreds of active follicles. Cells divide, shafts lengthen, and branching surfaces form over a period of months. At the same time, the peacock continues maintaining his flight feathers, muscles, skin, digestive organs, and immune defenses. He still needs energy for walking, feeding, calling, and reaching a safe roost each evening. The train, therefore, represents a large seasonal investment spread across many ordinary biological processes. its construction takes place quietly beneath the skin, one growing feather at a time. When the fan is complete, the living work that produced it is mostly hidden. The visible structure has become dry, lightweight, and temporary. Its brown foundation comes from familiar feather materials. Keratin gives the feather shape. Melanin, a dark pigment, appears within parts of its microscopic structure. Tiny spaces filled with air sit among those materials. Their exact arrangement controls how light leaves the surface. That arrangement allows a feather built from common biological substances to return intense blue, green, bronze, and gold toward the eye. A single train feather divides again and again as it spreads away from its central shaft. The shaft supports rows of narrow branches called barbs. Each barb carries even smaller branches called barbules. To the unaided eye, these parts blend into one smooth colored surface. Under a powerful microscope, the surface becomes a carefully ordered material, built at a scale of millions and billions of a meter. Some feather colors come mainly from pigment. A pigment is a substance that absorbs certain wavelengths of light. The wavelengths that remain can travel toward the eye and create the color we see. Melanin is one familiar feather pigment. It can produce black, brown, gray, or reddish tones, depending on its type and concentration. The bright colors of a peacock rely heavily on a second process called structural color. Structural color comes from the physical arrangement of material inside the feather. A blue region does not need to contain a simple blue dye. Its microscopic structure controls how incoming light waves interact, which wavelengths are weakened, and which ones return strongly toward an observer. Inside the colored barbules are tiny rods made from melanin. These rods are arranged in repeating patterns and held within keratin, the same protein that gives the feather its shape. Small pockets of air occupy spaces between the solid materials. Melanin, keratin, and air each bend and slow light by different amounts. When light crosses their many boundaries, part of the wave reflects. Those reflected waves can meet one another. Some line up in a way that makes them stronger. Others overlap out of step and partly cancel. This process is called interference. A similar effect can appear in the shifting colors on a soap bubble, although the peacock feather creates it through a far more detailed internal pattern. The repeating arrangement inside the barbule acts as a two-dimensional photonic crystal. A photonic crystal is a material with an ordered structure that affects the movement of light. The word photonic comes from photon, the name used for a small unit of light energy. Two-dimensional means the repeating pattern is organized mainly across two directions within the barbule. The individual structures are extremely small. Their spacing is measured in nanometers. 1 nanometer is 1/1000th of a meter. Visible light has wavelengths of a few hundred nanometers. Placing the internal spacing of the feather close to the scale needed to separate one part of the visible spectrum from another. Changes in that spacing alter the color. A slightly different distance between melanin rods can strengthen blue-green wavelengths instead of yellow or bronze ones. The number of layers also matters. More repeating layers can produce stronger reflection and greater brightness. The size, shape, and arrangement of the rods help create the different regions found across an eye spot. A dark center may contain structures and pigments that return little light. Nearby blue and green bands reflect selected wavelengths more strongly. Bronze and yellow-gold areas use different internal spacing, even though the same basic materials remain present. This helps explain how one feather can contain several sharply separated colors without being painted in separate liquid dyes. The physical order inside each region performs the separation. That order can also be disturbed. A feather that is crushed may lose some of its intense color because the barbules no longer sit at their original angles. Water or oil can fill spaces that previously contained air. This changes how strongly light bends at the boundaries inside the structure. A coating on the surface may reduce brightness by altering the path light takes before entering or leaving the barbule. The ingredients have not vanished, yet their optical relationships have changed. Even an undamaged feather can appear different when seen from a new position. The reflected wavelengths depend partly on the angle at which light enters the structure and the angle at which it reaches the eye. A blue-green patch can brighten as the feather turns, then darken after another small movement. Bronze may become more noticeable while nearby green fades. The color therefore belongs to the feather, the light source, and the observer's position at the same moment. During courtship, the peacock can change that relationship by turning his body, tilting the train, or moving across a patch of sunlight. The microscopic pattern stays fixed inside the barbules, while the visible surface continues to shift with every change in angle. Light leaving an eye spot travels toward the peahen from a particular direction. A small change in that direction can alter both the color she sees and the brightness reaching her eyes. This changing appearance is called iridescence. It occurs when reflected color depends on the angle between the light source, the feather surface, and the observer. A blue-green patch may glow strongly while the peahen stands in one position. After she moves several steps to the side, the same patch can become darker or shift toward another shade. The feather's internal structure remains unchanged. Only the path taken by the light has changed. Sunlight arrives as a mixture of many visible wavelengths. When those waves enter the ordered material inside a barbule, certain wavelengths are reflected more strongly at certain angles. A different viewing position changes which reflected waves travel toward the observer. That relationship makes the train appear alive with movement, even when the male is standing almost still. Each eye spot adds several optical regions to the display. Near its center is a dark area that may appear deep purple, blue-black, or nearly black. A bright blue-green band surrounds much of this center. Farther outward lie bronze, copper, and yellow-gold zones. Green feathers around the marking connect one eye spot to the wider train. These regions contain different arrangements of melanin rods, keratin, and air. Their internal spacing varies, so each region responds to light in its own way. The blue-green section may brighten sharply as the angle changes. Bronze areas can remain visible from a somewhat different range of positions. Dark regions absorb more light and create contrast around the brighter bands. Together, the zones help preserve the eye-like pattern, while individual colors rise and fade. The position of the male affects this entire optical system. Field researchers observing courtship found that displaying peacocks did not face in completely random directions relative to the sun. During train rattling, males often place the female on the brighter side of the fan. Their bodies commonly formed an angle of about 45 degrees relative to the direction of sunlight. This position can allow light to strike the train from one side while reflected color travels toward a female standing near the front. The exact angle changes as the sun moves across the sky. Cloud cover, nearby trees, and uneven ground can also alter illumination. A male may turn slightly as the female walks around him. He can rotate the fan, step sideways, or adjust its tilt while continuing the display. Researchers tested this behavior using a model shaped like a female peafowl. Males responded more often with train rattling when the model stood on the illuminated side of the display. When the model was placed where the train received less useful light, the behavior occurred less often. The experiment suggests that male orientation helps control how visible the signal becomes. No peacock needs to measure 45 degrees as a human would with a compass or protractor. The behavior can emerge through simpler responses. A male may remain in positions where the female stays attentive. Brighter flashes from the train may encourage him to continue facing a certain way. Movements by the female can cause small corrections in posture. Over many generations, males whose orientation improved the display could gain more mating opportunities. The result appears as a useful average across many courtship events, rather than a fixed rule followed in every moment. Morning sunlight may arrive low through branches. Midday light falls from a steeper angle and can create stronger glare. Late afternoon can warm the bronze regions, while placing part of the train in shadow. Vegetation around a display court further divides the light into bright patches and softer shade. The male's behavior works within these changing conditions. His train becomes a surface whose appearance is rebuilt from moment to moment. A female approaching from a distance receives one version of the fan. Closer to the male, she sees smaller shifts across individual eye spots. A turn of her head changes the angle again, allowing different colors to reach each eye. This moving geometry gives the display more information than a flat painted pattern could provide. Brightness, color change, symmetry, and the male's control of position can all become visible during the same encounter. Once the peahen stands near the illuminated fan, the display gains another layer. Muscles beneath the feathers begin to contract rapidly. The true tail presses against the long coverts, and the entire train starts vibrating many times each second. The first movement may appear almost too small to explain what follows. A slight tremor passes through the raised train. The true tail shifts beneath it, and contact spreads through the long coverts resting against one another. Within moments, the fan is vibrating so quickly that separate movements become difficult for the human eye to follow. This courtship behavior is called train rattling. The male holds the train upright while muscles around the base of the tail contract in rapid cycles. His shorter rectrices, the true tail feathers, move against the long decorative coverts above them. That contact transfers mechanical energy through the entire fan. High-speed video allows researchers to slow the display and count movements that pass too quickly during ordinary observation. Measurements of displaying Indian peacocks found an average vibration rate of about 25.6 Hz. A hertz means one cycle each second. The train therefore moves through roughly 25 to 26 vibration cycles during a single second. At that speed, the fine green parts of the feathers blur and shimmer. The sound arrives as a continuous rustle, even though it is being produced by a rapid series of repeated contacts. The male does not need to force every feather through a large sweeping motion. Much of the visible effect comes from resonance. Resonance occurs when a structure is driven near one of the rates at which it naturally prefers to vibrate. A playground swing offers a simple example. A well-timed push adds to the movement already taking place, allowing the swing to travel farther without requiring one enormous shove. A train feather behaves differently from a swing, yet the same broad principle applies. Each feather has natural vibration properties set by its length, stiffness, mass, and shape. When the tail drives the train near a useful frequency, the feathers respond more strongly than they would to poorly timed movement. This reduces the muscular effort needed to create a large visual effect across such a wide surface. The train contains feathers of many different lengths. Some extend only through the lower portion of the fan. Others rise more than a meter above the bird's back. A simple collection of rods with such different lengths would usually vibrate at very different natural rates. Peacock feathers partly solve this problem through changes in their construction. Longer feathers have shafts that vary in thickness and stiffness along their length. Mass is also distributed unevenly, with the wide eye spot region concentrated near the outer end. These differences allow many feathers across the train to respond within a broad, overlapping frequency range. The result is coordinated motion, without requiring every feather to be identical. Energy enters through the true tail near the center of the body. Neighboring feathers touch and press against one another. Vibration moves outward through shafts, barbs, and smaller barbules. Air resistance slows some parts more than others, while elasticity pulls bent structures back toward their resting positions. Each cycle becomes a balance among muscular force, feather stiffness, contact, and drag. The eye spots behave differently from the loose green regions surrounding them. An eye spot contains tightly packed barbs and barbules that make the area denser. This added mass reduces the size of its movement during train rattling. The lighter green sections around it travel through wider arcs and create a strong shimmering effect. A female therefore sees many relatively stable eye spots suspended within a rapidly moving field. The pattern remains easy to recognize while the background flashes and changes brightness. This combination may help the markings hold attention. A completely blurred train would lose much of its ordered pattern. A perfectly still train would lack the changing light and motion produced by vibration. The feather structure allows both effects to occur together. The male can also alter the intensity of the performance. A gentle rattle produces a softer shimmer. Stronger contractions increase contact among the feathers and make the movement more obvious. Small changes in posture shift which feathers touch most strongly, and where the vibration travels across the fan. The entire display emerges from structures already used for support, color, and flight-related plumage. Muscles provide the initial force. The true tail transfers that force into the coverts. Resonance spreads the effect through feathers whose shapes help them respond together. The fan now behaves as a temporary mechanical instrument assembled from living materials. Movement at more than 25 cycles each second also disturbs the surrounding air, pressure waves leave the feathers, carrying sound and low-frequency pulses toward any peahen standing nearby. The vibrating train sends part of its energy outward as pressure changes in the air. Those pressure changes reach the ear as sound. Peafowl are already known for loud vocal calls that can carry across woodland, farmland, and village edges. Their voices are produced inside the body by a bird's sound-making organ, called the syrinx. The rattle of the train comes from a different source. It is mechanical sound, created by feathers striking, rubbing, and moving against the surrounding air. That sound is broad and textured rather than a single clean note. A listener nearby may hear a dry rustle mixed with a deeper pulsing quality. Microphones reveal a repeating rhythm close to the same rate measured in the moving feathers. The strongest cycle occurs near 25.6 Hz, matching roughly 25 to 26 train movements each second. The recording also contains harmonics. A harmonic is a higher frequency linked mathematically to the main rhythm. When a system vibrates at about 25 Hz, related energy may also appear near 50 Hz, 75 Hz, and other multiples. These higher components help give the rattle its audible texture. Some of the energy remains much lower. Human hearing is usually described as extending down to about 20 Hz, although sensitivity becomes weak near that lower boundary and varies from person to person. Sound below 20 Hz is called infrasound. Parts of a peafowl display can reach this very low range. That does not make the whole courtship sound silent to people. Much of the rustling remains easy to hear. The lowest components simply add pressure changes that may be felt or detected differently from the clearer higher sounds. A peahen often receives these signals from close range. During detailed courtship, she may stand less than a meter from the front of the fan, although her distance changes as she circles, pauses, or walks away. At that range, several parts of the display arrive together. Iridescent colors change as she moves. The green barbs flicker around the steadier eye spots. Air pressure rises and falls with the feather rhythm. The rattle reaches both ears after traveling only a short distance. This creates a sensory event larger than the picture seen by a human observer standing far away. The female can receive information through vision and hearing, while air also moves across the feathers of her own body. Even small pressure pulses may become noticeable when they repeat more than 20 times each second. The exact importance of each channel remains difficult to separate. A female may respond to color first, and then remain because of movement. Sound may help maintain attention at close range. Airflow could add information about distance, direction, or the strength of the male's performance. These possibilities are tested through experiments that isolate one part of the display at a time. Peacocks also use a slower movement called wing shaking. During this behavior, the male holds one wing partly open and shakes it near the female. Laboratory devices built to copy the movement have operated at about 5 cycles per second. That rhythm is far slower than train rattling. The wing produces stronger directional puffs of air because its broad surface pushes outward during each movement. Train rattling creates a faster field of vibration spread across a much larger feather array. The two behaviors therefore send different mechanical patterns toward the female. One produces rapid shimmering and a continuous rattle. The other creates slower pulses from a smaller area beside the body. Both can occur during the same courtship sequence, giving the male several ways to direct attention without relying entirely on his voice. Mechanical signals are common among birds. Woodpeckers drum on hollow branches. Snipe create sound with specialized tail feathers during flight. Some manakins snap or rub their wings fast enough to produce sharp courtship sounds. The peacock uses a much larger surface, turning an ornamental train into both a visual display and a source of moving air. A nearby peahen carries a small upright crest on her head. Its slender shafts end in wider feather tips that catch passing airflow. When the male's train or wings begin moving, that crest can vibrate in response. The moving air reaches the peahen's crest before it travels much farther. At first glance, the crest looks like a small decorative crown. Its structure gives it another useful property. A peafowl crest usually contains several dozen slender feathers rising from a small area on top of the head. Each feather has a narrow shaft with a wider, fan-shaped tip. Most of the surface area sits high above the skin, while the base remains thin and flexible. Engineers describe this general shape as an inverted pendulum, a normal pendulum that carries its weight near the bottom, like the swinging part of a clock. The crest places more material near the top. Passing air can catch the wide tip and bend the narrow shaft beneath it. That motion travels downward toward the point where the feather enters the skin. Researchers became interested in the crest because its mechanical shape seemed well suited to receiving the air movements produced during courtship. They carefully removed complete crest arrays from naturally deceased birds and mounted them in laboratory equipment. The feather tips were then exposed to recorded sounds played at different frequencies. Lasers and sensitive cameras measured movements too small and fast for ordinary vision. The test showed that the crest did not respond equally to every sound. Its strongest movements occurred within a band of low frequencies that overlaps with signals peafowl produced during social displays. Train rattling creates a strong rhythm near 25 to 26 cycles per second. The mounted crest responded efficiently near this same range. That overlap matters because a receiver works best when its structure can move readily at the frequency being sent toward it. The effect resembles the resonance seen in the train itself. A well-matched rhythm creates a larger response from a small repeated force. The crest and train serve very different jobs, yet both use the natural vibration properties of feathers. One sends mechanical energy into the air. The other can move when that energy arrives. Researchers also tested the slower airflow produced by wing shaking. A laboratory machine was built to copy the movement of a peacock's wing. The device shook a real or model wing at about 5 cycles per second, close to the pace observed during courtship. Each sweep pushed a pulse of air toward a mounted crest. The wide feather tips bent with the passing airflow, then returned toward their resting position. Measurable movement continued at distances reaching roughly 90 centimeters in the experimental setup. That distance fits the close spacing sometimes seen between a displaying male and an attentive female. The crest may therefore receive several kinds of mechanical information. Rapid train rattling creates repeated low-frequency pressure changes. Slower wing movements produce distinct puffs of directed air. A nearby bird could experience different patterns depending on the behavior being performed and its position beside the male. Feathers around the base of the crest may help the nervous system detect this movement. Birds possess small sensory structures associated with feather follicles. These receptors can respond when a feather bends or shifts, giving the animal information about feather position, touch, and airflow. Filoplumes may also contribute. A filoplume is a thin sensory feather that often grows beside larger feathers and helps monitor their movement. The laboratory results establish the physical part of this idea. Peafowl crests can vibrate in response to frequencies and air movements associated with courtship. The biological meaning remains less certain. Scientists have not yet shown that a peahen ranks males according to the strength of crest vibration. A moving crest might help her notice that a display has begun. It could provide information about direction or distance. The sensation may simply accompany visual and audible signals without changing her final decision. Behavioral experiments would be needed to separate those possibilities. Researchers could compare normal courtship responses with situations in which crest movement is gently reduced while hearing and vision remain available. Such work would need careful design, so the equipment itself did not distract or discomfort the bird. For now, the crest offers a well-supported mechanical possibility rather than a completed explanation of mate choice. That distinction keeps the finding useful. The display can send energy through color, sound, and moving air, while the peahen's body contains structures capable of responding to each channel. Her crest may reveal what reaches her skin. Her eyes provide a more direct record of which parts of the male receive her attention. Lightweight tracking equipment has allowed researchers to follow that gaze during courtship and see where it settles across the enormous fan. A peahen's gaze can now be followed almost frame by frame. Researchers have fitted females with lightweight eye-tracking equipment designed for birds. A tiny camera records the scene in front of the peahen. Another sensor follows the movement of her eye. Software then combines those signals to estimate where her attention rests as she walks, turns her head, and approaches a displaying male. The equipment must remain light enough for the bird to move naturally. Peafowl do not hold their heads still like people watching a screen. They bob, tilt, pause, and scan the ground while continuing to watch their surroundings. Those movements make the recordings difficult to interpret, but they also reveal something that ordinary observation cannot show. A human viewer often notices the upper half of the train first. It rises above the male's head and carries rows of large eye spots. The fan can fill most of the visible space around the bird. At close range, the peahen often directs much of her gaze lower down. She looks toward the base of the train, the male's body, his legs, and the moving feathers nearest the ground. Her attention may settle on areas only a short distance above the soil. This lower region contains useful information. The peahen can see how steadily the male stands. She can follow the rhythm of train rattling and watch the smaller feathers moving around his body. Broken shafts, empty gaps, uneven movement, or poor control may be easier to notice from nearby. The legs also reveal balance and posture during a display that requires repeated muscular effort. The upper fan still performs an important job. From farther away, vegetation may hide the male's feet and lower body. A tall train can remain visible above grass, shrubs, or uneven ground. Its rounded outline creates a large target that can attract attention before the female is close enough to inspect individual feathers. Researchers have tested this by blocking parts of the train. When the lower region was hidden, females at close range often lost interest more quickly. When upper portions were covered, the display became harder to detect from farther away, especially where plants stood between the birds. Different parts of the fan can therefore serve different stages of the same encounter. The upper train helps a male become noticeable across distance. Closer inspection brings the lower display, body position, and movement into greater importance. The peahen's viewing pattern also changes when the male begins to move. Train rattling can draw her gaze toward the vibrating feathers. Wing shaking may redirect attention toward one side of his body. A sudden increase in motion can make her pause, turn, or remain near the display for several seconds longer. Movement gives the male some control over the timing of her attention. He cannot force her to stay. A peahen can look away, continue feeding, circle behind him, or leave the court entirely. Her choices decide which signals receive further inspection. That limited attention helps explain why the display contains several kinds of information. A distant female may first notice overall height, color, and the outline of the fan. As she approaches, changing light reveals the quality of individual eye spots. The lower train then brings feather condition and movement into view. Posture, display rhythm, territory, and the male's response to her position can become relevant during the final moments. No single view contains every useful detail. The signal unfolds as distance closes. This makes the peahen an active part of the display system. The male provides feathers, movement, color, and sound. Her eyes determine which parts enter her field of attention and for how long. Her approach changes the angle of reflected light. Her position influences where the male turns and when he begins rattling. A courtship display therefore develops through an exchange between sender and receiver. That exchange carries a biological consequence. Males receiving more sustained attention may gain more chances to mate. Those matings determine which inherited traits appear more often in later generations. This link between attention and reproduction led Charles Darwin toward a form of selection that could build elaborate ornaments even when they offered no direct help with finding food or reaching a safe roost. A male that receives more female attention gains more chances to pass his inherited traits into the next generation. This consequence sits at the center of sexual selection. Evolution is often explained through survival. An animal that avoids predators, finds enough food, and tolerates harsh weather may live long enough to reproduce. Reproduction completes the process. A male that survives for many years but leaves no offspring passes none of his inherited features onward. Another male may have a shorter life yet produce many young, allowing more copies of his genes to enter the population. Natural selection describes changes that occur when inherited differences affect survival and reproduction. Sexual selection focuses more closely on inherited differences that affect access to mates or successful fertilization. The two processes operate together within the same animal. Strong legs can help a peacock escape danger. A well-positioned, brightly colored train may improve his chances during courtship. Both traits can influence how many descendants he leaves, although they work through different parts of his life. Charles Darwin understood the broad power of natural selection while developing his theory during the 19th century. His book, On the Origin of Species, published in 1859, explained how inherited variation and unequal reproductive success could gradually change populations. Some traits remain difficult to explain through survival alone. Large antlers require material and energy. Bright plumage can make an animal easier to notice. Long songs take time and may reveal the singer's location. The peacock's train gathered many of these difficulties into one highly visible example. Darwin explored the solution in much greater detail in The Descent of Man and Selection in Relation to Sex, published in 1871. He described two broad routes through which sexual selection could operate. Competition among males can favor greater size, stronger weapons, or behaviors that help one male gain access to females. Female preference can favor colors, sounds, movements, or ornaments that influence which male receives a mating opportunity. Peafowl show elements of both. Males defend display areas and sometimes fight. Peahens approach, inspect, remain near certain males, or walk away. Those small decisions can accumulate into large changes across many generations. Imagine a population in which some males inherit slightly longer upper tail coverts. Suppose females approach those males a little more often. The longer trained males then produce slightly more offspring on average. Some sons inherit the tendency to grow longer feathers. Some daughters inherit sensory preferences or behavioral responses that make the ornament more effective. Across one generation, the difference may remain small. Repeated through hundreds or thousands of generations, the average train can become much larger. This process requires inherited variation. If every male produced exactly the same train, female choice could not favor one train form over another. Variation arises through genetic differences, development, age, nutrition, health, and feather condition. Selection changes how often inherited versions of those traits appear over time. The peahen does not need to understand any of this. She does not calculate gene frequencies or predict the appearance of future descendants. Her nervous system responds to visible color, movement, sound, position, and other features. She may remain near one male longer than another. A mating decision follows from those sensory and behavioral responses. That single event contributes to the next generation. Sexual selection can therefore favor a structure that offers little help during feeding or escape. A train may even carry moderate costs while still spreading, provided its reproductive advantage outweighs those costs. Natural selection continues setting limits. A male still needs enough strength to forage, avoid predators, grow feathers, and survive the breeding season. An ornament that became too costly could reduce survival or conditions so severely that its mating advantage would no longer compensate. The size of the train reflects this continuing balance. Female choice can push the structure toward greater elaboration. Daily survival places boundaries around how far that elaboration can go. The broad process explains how courtship can shape an animal over long periods of time. It does not identify the exact detail being evaluated during a peahen's close inspection. Train length, eye spot number, color, symmetry, movement, and display position have all been measured. Their importance has not remained identical across every study or every population. The first measurement seemed straightforward. A researcher could compare the length of each train, count the eye spots, record the number of displays, and then see which males attracted the most females. Adult trains vary in several visible ways. One male may carry slightly longer coverts. Another may have more complete eye spots or fewer broken feathers. Differences also appear in color, symmetry, age, posture, vibration rate, and the amount of time spent displaying. Even the location of a male's court can matter. A shaded territory, an open line of sight, or a position close to a route used by females may change how often his display is encountered. Early field studies gave special attention to the eye spots. In one well-known population, males with more ocelli tended to achieve greater mating success. Researchers also shortened the display of selected males by removing some eye spot-bearing feathers. Those altered males receive fewer matings, suggesting that the completeness of the pattern influenced female response. The result fit a simple expectation. A larger collection of eye spots seemed to create a more attractive train. Later work made the picture less direct. A 7-year study of free-ranging peafowl in Japan followed males through repeated breeding seasons. Researchers measured train length, eye spot number, symmetry, display behavior, and mating success. Within that population, females showed no convincing preference for males carrying the longest trains, the most symmetrical fans, or the greatest number of eye spots. Normal differences among mature males did not produce the steady ranking that a simple ornament counting model predicted. Similar difficulties appeared in other studies. 2 adult males might differ by several eye spots, while both remained well within the normal range for a complete train. That difference could have little effect on female behavior. A more severe loss produced a clearer response. In later experiments, removing around 20 eye spots caused a sharp decline in mating success. The affected trains still remained large and colorful, yet their pattern had become visibly incomplete. Adding more eye spots within the ordinary adult range did not create an equally steady improvement. These findings support a threshold model. A threshold is a minimum level that must be reached before a feature performs its job effectively. A peahen may respond poorly to a train, with obvious gaps or too few complete markings. Once the fan passes that basic standard, counting every additional eye spot may offer little advantage. Attention can then shift toward other details. Color has provided one strong candidate. Researchers have measured the brightness and exact reflected wavelengths of the blue-green regions inside the ocelli. In some populations, males with particular blue-green color qualities achieved much greater mating success than males whose eye spots appeared duller or reflected light differently. Structural color depends on the fine arrangement inside each barbule. Developmental stress, feather wear, and growth conditions could influence how accurately that structure forms. The color may therefore carry information that a simple eye spot count misses. Behavior adds another layer. A complete train has limited value when the male rarely displays. Sunlight can illuminate the fan poorly if he chooses an ineffective position. Train rattling loses impact when the female is standing behind him or moving away. A male that responds quickly to her position can keep the useful surface oriented toward her. Persistence may also matter, especially when females visit several courts before mating. Age can influence many of these features at once. An older male may possess a fuller train, greater experience in choosing a display site, and better control of courtship movements. Territory quality can then amplify or weaken those advantages. A highly visible court may attract more visits regardless of small differences in feather count. Vegetation height, shade, neighboring males, and paths between feeding areas can all change which displays females encounter. Mate choice therefore unfolds through several stages. A large upper fan may attract attention from a distance. A sufficiently complete eye spot pattern may encourage closer approach. Color and movement become easier to inspect nearby. Posture, territory, and persistence can influence whether the female remains. Each population experiences a different mixture of habitat, male variation, and social conditions. That helps explain why one measurement can predict success strongly in one study and weakly in another. The remaining challenge is to identify what makes any reliable signal difficult to produce. When a feature honestly reflects condition or ability, some cost usually prevents every male from creating the same convincing performance. The peacock's train looks expensive, although its most obvious costs have not always appeared where researchers expected to find them. A full train looks as though it should make every movement harder. It adds length, catches air, and carries extra mass behind the body. From that appearance, several predictions seem reasonable. Walking should require more energy. Running should become less stable. Takeoff should demand more power. Researchers have tested those ideas directly, rather than relying on appearance. In one flight experiment, adult peacocks were recorded during steep takeoffs while carrying their complete trains. The same birds were then tested again after the long coverts had been removed. This allowed each male to serve as his own comparison. The train accounted for about 6.9% of total body mass in the birds studied. Removing it also reduced a form of air resistance called parasite drag. Parasite drag is resistance created when air flows around parts of the body that do not provide useful lift, such as the torso, legs, or trailing feathers. The train roughly doubled this component of drag during takeoff. That increase sounds large until it is compared with the full power needed to lift the bird. During the first seconds of flight, most of the peacock's energy goes into supporting its body weight and accelerating upward. The added drag from the train accounted for only about 0.1% of the estimated total aerodynamic power. Researchers found no meaningful decline in takeoff speed, flight angle, or the amount of mechanical power produced while the train was attached. The male's large breast muscles already generate enough force to lift several kilograms of body mass. Within that powerful movement, the train's extra drag made a surprisingly small difference. Walking produced a similar result. Peacocks were trained to move on a treadmill, while equipment measured oxygen use and carbon dioxide production. Those measurements allowed researchers to estimate how much energy the birds were spending. Cameras also recorded stride length, foot placement, and the timing of each step. The males were tested with full trains and again after the long feathers had been removed. Carrying the train did not create a clear increase in the energy required for walking. The basic pattern of the stride also remained stable. The folded feathers trail behind the body in a narrow bundle, so they do not swing like a heavy solid object with every step. Their branching structure provides a large visible area while keeping their total mass relatively low. These results change the usual picture of the peacock. The train still has costs, although its largest costs may occur away from ordinary walking and takeoff. Growing hundreds of long feathers requires amino acids, blood supply, and months of follicle activity. A male must maintain those feathers through preening and carry them through brush, rain, dust, and repeated displays. Broken shafts and missing eye spots remain visible until molt replaces them. Feather parasites can damage the fine structures that produce color and smooth movement. Courtship adds another expense. Holding the fan upright requires muscular work. Train rattling repeats more than 25 times each second and may continue through many displays during a breeding day. Time spent calling, turning toward females, and defending a court cannot be spent feeding. A displaying bird also becomes easier to notice, especially in open ground where the train works best as a signal. Seasonal timing reduces some of these pressures. The male carries the largest train during the breeding period and sheds it afterward. His body can also store energy, adjust daily activity, and rely on a broad diet while the feathers are growing. Behavior further limits the burden. The train stays folded during travel. Running usually begins before flight. Roost trees are approached along familiar routes. Open feeding areas often remain close to cover. Natural selection can shape the rest of the animal around an ornament that has already become important. Strong legs support steady ground movement. Broad wings provide rapid lift. Light feather construction reduces mass. Seasonal molt prevents the full train from becoming a permanent year-round expense. The display remains demanding, but its owner is far more capable than the fan size suggests. That balance becomes clearest during the hours when no female is standing nearby, and the train rests in a narrow line behind a bird searching quietly for its next meal. Morning activity often begins near the edge of cover. An Indian peacock may step from scrub or woodland into grass, a farm margin, or a quiet clearing, while the air is still cool. The train follows in a narrow bundle behind him. His head moves in short, careful turns as he searches the ground and watches the surrounding vegetation. Indian peafowl have a broad diet. They eat grass seeds, fallen grain, tender shoots, berries, figs, and other fruit. Beetles, termites, ants, and grasshoppers add animal protein. A bird may also take a small lizard, frog, snake, or mouse when the opportunity appears. This flexibility allows peafowl to use both natural habitat and land changed by people. A flock can feed beneath forest trees one morning and visit the edge of a cultivated field later the same day. The bird gathers food with its bill and swallows each piece without chewing. Peafowl have no teeth for grinding food in the mouth. After swallowing, food passes through the esophagus and may pause inside the crop. The crop is an expandable pouch that stores food briefly, allowing the bird to feed quickly when a safe opportunity appears. From there, food enters the stomach. One chamber begins chemical digestion with acid and enzymes. A second chamber, called the gizzard, has thick muscular walls. The gizzard squeezes and crushes hard seeds through repeated contractions. Small stones or coarse grains swallowed from the ground can remain inside and help grind the food into smaller pieces. This internal processing allows a peacock to consume dry grain without carrying heavy jaws or chewing teeth. Feeding often slows as the day becomes hotter. During warm weather, peafowl may move beneath trees or into dense shade around midday. Activity increases again later in the afternoon as temperatures fall. Local routines depend on rainfall, season, disturbance, and the distance between food, water, and secure cover. Water may come from streams, ponds, irrigation channels, or containers near human settlements. Between feeding periods, plumage care occupies part of the day. A peacock uses his bill to clean and align the train feathers. Preening reconnects tiny feather branches that have slipped apart and removes loose dirt from the surface. The bird may twist his neck far around the body to reach feathers near the back and tail. Dust bathing provides another form of care. A peafowl settles into dry, loose soil and works dust through its plumage with movements of the wings and body. Fine particles can absorb excess oil and help disturb some external parasites. Afterward, the bird shakes vigorously and preens the feathers back into order. Awareness continues during all of these ordinary tasks. A peafowl may stop feeding and hold its head high after hearing a sudden sound. Its eyes sit on the sides of the skull, giving a wide view of the surrounding ground. Several birds feeding together create more chances for one individual to notice movement. They do not perform a perfectly organized guard system, but the alarm of one bird can quickly affect the rest. A warning call may cause nearby peafowl to freeze or move toward vegetation. Running is often the first response when cover is close. Strong legs carry the bird rapidly across uneven soil. The folded train streams behind the male and avoids much of the air resistance created by the open fan. If danger closes the distance, the wings provide a more powerful escape. The peacock launches with loud, forceful wing beats and climbs toward a branch, wall, or rooftop. Familiar routes help connect the different parts of its home area. Feeding clearings lie within reach of shrubs or trees. Water sites are visited repeatedly. Roosts are often used night after night when they remain safe. As evening approaches, the birds leave open feeding ground and gather near these elevated sleeping places. A peacock may first fly to a low branch, pause, and then climb higher with another short flight. The full body and folded train settle along a sturdy limb, several meters above the ground. Height reduces access for many terrestrial predators and gives the bird time to react to movement below. The train that dominated courtship now rests almost motionless behind him. Its survival depends on the routine surrounding it. Enough food to maintain the body, careful feather care, reliable cover, and a safe roost reached before darkness. Across the year, rainfall and changing food supplies gradually alter these daily movements. Mature males begin returning more often to particular clearings, where ordinary travel routes develop into defended places for calling and display. As rainfall changes the landscape, the paths used for feeding begin to carry more birds toward the same open places. The timing varies across the Indian peafowl's wide range. In parts of India, courtship becomes most active before and during the monsoon. Elsewhere, local breeding may begin earlier or continue later, depending on temperature, food supply, water, and the growth of vegetation. A fixed calendar would miss these regional differences. Rain can increase the number of insects available to adults and chicks. Fresh plant growth adds food and cover. Wet ground may also change which clearings remain open enough for a male to display. The breeding season emerges from several conditions lining up within the same landscape. Mature males begin spending more time in small areas used for courtship. A chosen site may be a patch of bare soil, short grass, or open woodland, where the train has room to spread. The male watches the boundaries, calls repeatedly, and may chase another peacock that enters too closely. Several males can hold separate display areas within hearing or sight of one another. This arrangement is often described as a lek. A lek is a place where males gather for display, while females visit and choose among them. Peacock territories are sometimes spread farther apart than the tightly packed courts of other lekking birds. For that reason, researchers may call the arrangement an exploded lek. Each male keeps his own space, while the wider group remains connected through calls, movement, and the routes used by visiting females. The first signal can travel well beyond the train itself. A peacock's loud call carries through trees and across open ground, announcing that a mature male is nearby. The call can reach birds hidden by vegetation or standing beyond direct sight. Once a peahen enters visual range, the raised train creates a target that may remain visible above grass or low shrubs. Closer contact brings smaller movements into use. Wing shaking sends pulses of air beside the body. Train rattling produces rapid shimmer, sound, and vibration after the female approaches the front of the fan. The sequence follows distance. A call works across the broadest area. The open train helps guide attention toward a particular male. Fine color, posture, and mechanical movement become easier to inspect nearby. Females may visit more than one display site before mating. They can walk away from a male after only a brief look, return later, or move toward a neighboring court. This freedom creates strong differences in reproductive success. In one classic study of lekking peacocks, the most successful male achieved 12 observed copulations during the season. Several others achieved far fewer. Some territorial males received none at all. The contrast matters because each successful mating creates another chance for that male's inherited traits to enter the following generation. A court can look similar from one year to the next, while the genetic contribution of its males remains highly unequal. Location influences these outcomes. A territory beside a regular female travel route may receive more visits. Open ground can improve visibility, while nearby shade gives birds relief during warm hours. Too much vegetation blocks the lower train. A site with little cover may increase exposure to disturbance or predators. The quality of a display therefore depends partly on the male and partly on the ground he occupies. Neighboring males add another layer. DNA fingerprinting at one studied location found that males displaying within the same lek were more closely related to one another than males from different leks. DNA fingerprinting compares inherited genetic markers allowing researchers to estimate biological relatedness. A separate release experiment found that related males were more likely to establish display sites near one another. These findings raise the possibility that kinship influences where some peacocks settle. A male that gains no mating may still share genes with a successful relative nearby, helping create a larger, more noticeable display area could then provide an indirect genetic benefit. Evidence from one location cannot define every peacock lek. Habitat, population density, and local history can produce different arrangements elsewhere. Kinship remains one possible influence alongside competition, familiarity, and the availability of suitable ground. The seasonal display area is therefore a network rather than a single isolated performance. Calls bring distant birds into contact. Territories shape which males a female encounters. Relatedness may influence where some neighbors settle. A brief mating marks the biological result of this entire system. Afterward, the male returns to his court, while the peahen carries the reproductive process into concealed vegetation, a ground nest, and nearly a month of incubation. The peahen leaves the open display ground carrying the result of a brief mating inside her body. Her task now depends on concealment. A raised train benefits from sunlight and clear lines of sight. A nest survives more easily when grass, shrubs, or fallen branches hide it from view. Indian peahens usually nest on the ground. The nest may be a shallow hollow beneath dense vegetation, beside a fallen log, or inside a protected patch of scrub. Dry leaves, grass, and small pieces of plant material form a simple lining. The female often selects a place close enough to feeding habitat for short trips away, while still offering cover from animals passing nearby. Clutch size varies with the age and condition of the female, local food supply, and the survival of earlier eggs. Many nests contain roughly 4 to 8 eggs, although field accounts sometimes report clutches reaching about 10. Each egg is several centimeters long and usually pale cream, buff, or light brown. The shell encloses a developing embryo along with yolk that supplies fat, protein, and other nutrients. Incubation lasts about 28 to 30 days. During that period, the peahen settles her warm body over the eggs and turns them at intervals. Turning helps prevent the embryo from resting against one part of the inner shell for too long. It also spreads heat and nutrients more evenly through the contents. A patch of skin on the underside of the female has fewer feathers during incubation. This brood patch allows body heat to pass more directly into the eggs. The developing chicks require a stable temperature close to the warmth of the adult bird. Extended cooling can slow development, while overheating can also cause harm. The peahen leaves for limited periods to drink, feed, and pass waste away from the nest. She returns quietly and lowers herself over the clutch again. Her plumage supports this work. Brown, grey, and muted green feathers blend with soil, dry grass, and leaf litter. Dark bars and uneven patches interrupt the outline of her body. A predator scanning the ground may see separate shapes and shadows, rather than the complete form of a sitting bird. This camouflage reflects a reproductive role very different from the male's open display. Bright male plumage helps attract attention during courtship. The female's coloring improves her chances of remaining unnoticed while she protects eggs in a fixed location. Near the end of incubation, faint sounds may begin inside the shells. A chick uses a small temporary point on its bill, called an egg tooth, to break through the inner membrane and then chip at the shell. Hatching can take several hours. The chick must pause often as it turns and widens the opening. Pea chicks emerge covered in patterned down, with open eyes and legs strong enough to support them soon after drying. They are precocial birds. Precocial means that the young hatch at a relatively advanced stage and can walk shortly after leaving the egg. They do not remain helpless in the nest while the mother carries food back to them. The peahen leads them away from the nesting site and begins guiding them through the landscape. Small insects provide useful protein during early growth. Seeds, tender plant material, and fallen food become more important as the chicks develop. Their mother directs them toward shade during hot periods and gathers them beneath her body when temperatures fall. A soft call can keep the group together in thick vegetation. Sharper sounds may cause the chicks to freeze, crouch, or run toward cover. Young birds learn through repeated movement with the female. They follow roots toward water. They discover loose soil used for dust bathing. Safe shrubs and low branches become familiar resting places. As their wing feathers strengthen, they gain the ability to flutter upward and eventually join adults at higher night roosts. The difference between young males and females remains limited during the earliest months. Later, molts begin changing the male's neck color and lengthening the feathers above his true tail. A complete adult train requires several growth cycles. Many males do not carry a fully developed display until around their third or fourth year. Reaching that stage requires surviving ground predators, harsh weather, disease, and periods of limited food. The male's fan represents one form of reproductive investment. Egg production, incubation, camouflage, and chick guidance place a different set of demands on the female. Both paths shape which young birds survive long enough to continue the lineage. As those chicks mature, their Indian peafowl form can be compared with relatives whose courtship bodies follow very different designs in Southeast Asian woodland and the forests of Central Africa. A young Indian male carries only part of the form he may eventually develop. His neck gradually deepens toward blue, while each new molt produces longer feathers above the true tail. Several years may pass before the full adult train appears. Elsewhere in the peafowl family, maturity leads toward a different final design. The green peafowl, known scientifically as Pavo muticus, still produces a long courtship train in the male. Its body plumage changes the overall effect. Overlapping feathers cover the neck and breast with a scaled pattern of green, bronze, blue, and copper. Each feather has a darker edge, making the surface resemble rows of small polished plates. The female green peafowl carries much of this color as well. Her train remains shorter, and the male develops greater size and ornament. Yet the contrast between the sexes is less extreme than it is in Indian peafowl. An Indian peahen has a mostly brown body suited to concealment on the ground. A green peahen retains a bright metallic neck that can resemble the male's plumage when seen from a distance. This difference shows that male ornament and female camouflage do not always evolve in the same proportion. Local habitat, predator pressure, courtship behavior, and the female's own signaling needs can change how color is divided between the sexes. Green peafowl once occupied a broad region across Southeast Asia. Their historical range extended from northeastern India through Myanmar, Thailand, Laos, Cambodia, Vietnam, southern China, and Java. Today, the remaining populations are scattered and separated. Many groups depend on landscapes containing dry deciduous forest, grassy openings, riverbanks, tall roost trees, and dependable water. Deciduous forest contains trees that lose their leaves during part of the year. As the canopy opens, sunlight reaches grasses and low plants below. These areas can provide feeding ground, while nearby woodland offers shade, nesting cover, and branches for sleeping above the ground. A green peafowl population needs several of these resources within traveling distance. A small patch of trees may offer a roost, while lacking safe nesting ground. An open field may provide insects and shoots, while leaving birds exposed to hunting or disturbance. Connected habitat allows adults to move between seasonal food, water, display sites, and quieter breeding areas. The Congo peafowl follows a much more compact design. Known scientifically as Afropavo congensis, it lives within the lowland forests of the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The male carries dark blue and green plumage, with reddish skin visible around parts of the neck. His crest consists of pale, narrow feathers that rise above the head. The body is shorter than that of the Asian peafowl, and no enormous field of eye-spotted coverts extends behind it. During display, the shorter true tail becomes more visible. Courtship can include raised feathers, lowered wings, body movements, and the presentation of a compact tail inside dense forest. A towering fan would have limited viewing distance among closely spaced trunks, vines, and broad leaves. Long feathers would also make movement through thick lower vegetation more difficult. The Congo form preserves the shared peafowl body, while placing far less material into an extended train. Its recognition by science began with feathers that did not seem to match any known bird. The American ornithologist James Chapin had encountered unusual Congo feathers during his work in Central Africa. Years later, in 1936, he examined two mounted birds held at the Belgian Congo Museum in Tervuren, near Brussels. The specimens had previously been treated as young Asian peafowl. Their anatomy and plumage showed that they belonged to a separate African species. Chapin named the Congo peafowl and placed it within its own genus, Afropavo. The discovery showed how an animal can remain scientifically hidden even after specimens have entered a museum collection. Expectation had influenced identification. Because the birds resembled peafowl without carrying the familiar adult train, they had been interpreted as immature examples of an Asian form. Comparison revealed a different history. Indian, green, and Congo peafowl inherited a related ground bird body, then carried that body through separate environments. Open Asian landscapes allowed tall trains to remain visible across distance. Central African forest favored a display that could operate within shorter sight lines. The enormous Indian fan became the best-known result because people admired it, bred it, represented it in art, and transported its owners far beyond South Asia. Long before museums began comparing peafowl species, people had already been moving Indian peafowl far beyond their native range. The same display shaped through courtship also attracted human attention. A mature train could reach more than 1 meter in length and carry over 100 eye-shaped markings. Its feathers remain bright after being shed, making them useful as decorations without requiring the bird to be killed. Living peafowl offered something even more striking. A male walking through a palace garden could raise the entire fan, turn toward the sun, and produce colors that changed as viewers moved around him. For rulers and wealthy households, keeping such birds became a visible sign of access to distant lands and unusual animals. The peacock's deepest cultural history developed within South Asia, where Indian peafowl had long lived beside farms, woodland, villages, and religious centers. Images of the bird appear in carved stone, painted manuscripts, metalwork, woven cloth, and decorated buildings. Its feathers were placed in fans, crowns, and ceremonial objects. Different traditions gave the bird different meanings, including beauty, watchfulness, royal status, and protection. In many images of Krishna, a peacock feather appears in his hair or crown. The feather became one of the visual details used to identify him, especially in paintings and sculptures showing Krishna as a young cowherd. The peacock is also closely connected with Kartikeya, known as Murugan in southern India. This deity is often shown riding a peacock or standing beside one. The bird in these religious traditions carries cultural meaning created by people. Its eye spots still arise from feather structure and reflected light, while human stories give those markings an additional symbolic life. Peafowl also traveled west through trade routes linking South Asia with Persia, Mesopotamia, and the Mediterranean world. Transporting a living bird required more effort than carrying feathers. Handlers needed food, water, secure cages, and stopping places where the animal could rest. Peafowl helped make that journey possible through their broad diet and ability to live around people. Royal collections could then breed them, reducing the need to import every new bird from the original range. In ancient Greek tradition, the peacock became associated with Hera, the queen of the gods. Roman culture later connected it with Juno, Hera's Roman counterpart. One myth linked the many eye spots with Argus, a watchman described as having numerous eyes. After his death, the story says that his eyes were placed upon the peacock's feathers. This tale offered a cultural explanation for a pattern that biology produces through ordered barbules, melanin rods, keratin, and air. Peafowl continued moving through royal courts, religious properties, private estates, and ornamental gardens. Their spread did not happen through one single migration. Individual birds and small breeding groups were carried repeatedly along different routes over many centuries. By the medieval period, peafowl were familiar in parts of Europe. They appeared in manuscript illustrations, household records, and formal feasts. A roasted peacock could be presented with decorative feathers restored around the body, turning the meal into a display of wealth. Estates later kept living birds on lawns and around large houses, where their calls and trains made them difficult to overlook. European colonization and expanding sea travel carried Indian peafowl into further regions, including islands, southern Africa, Australia, and the Americas. Some remained inside managed collections. Others were released or escaped and found suitable climates, food, and roosting trees nearby. human choice also began changing the bird's appearance. Captive breeders preserved unusual color forms that would be rare in wild populations. White peafowl provide a familiar example. Many are leucistic, meaning that genetic changes reduce pigment in the feathers. Their bodies may appear almost completely white, while their eyes retain a normal dark or blue-gray color. A true albino has a more complete loss of melanin and often shows pinkish or reddish eyes because blood vessels become visible through tissues lacking pigment. Pied peafowl carry irregular white areas beside normally colored feathers. Selective breeding can increase these patterns by choosing particular adults as parents across several generations. In 1963, the government of India formally selected the Indian peafowl as the country's national bird. Its native range, long cultural history, and immediate visual identity all contributed to that choice. By then, the species had become recognizable far beyond South Asia. Human preference had acted as a powerful force of dispersal. Features that first influenced peahens also persuaded people to protect certain birds, breed unusual forms, and transport them across oceans. In many places, the birds eventually moved beyond garden walls. A peacock that thrives around lawns, rooftops, roads, and regular human feeding can become a permanent neighbor, bringing its beauty together with loud calls, damaged plants, and difficult questions about how free-ranging populations should be managed. Long before museums began comparing peafowl species, people had already been moving Indian peafowl far beyond their native range. The same display shaped through courtship also attracted human attention. A mature train could reach more than 1 meter in length and carry over 100 eye-shaped markings. Once peafowl settle beyond managed gardens, their survival depends on how well they can use the spaces people have built. Indian peafowl are unusually flexible. They can forage on lawns, farm edges, roadsides, and parkland. Gardens provide fallen fruit, seeds, insects, and tender shoots. Buildings offer ledges and rooftops, while mature trees provide familiar night roosts. A neighborhood containing open ground, scattered cover, and regular water can support birds for many years. Their broad diet helps them adjust. A peacock may feed on grain spilled near livestock, insects disturbed by lawn mowing, or fruit fallen beneath an ornamental tree. Irrigation systems and garden ponds can supply water through dry periods. Warm climates reduce the seasonal pressures that might otherwise limit reproduction. Once several females begin nesting successfully, a small introduced group can become a stable local population. Many residents enjoy their presence. A male opening his train on a lawn can become part of a neighborhood's identity. People may photograph the birds, protect nesting females, and bring visitors to see them. The same population can also create daily conflict. Peafowl calls are loud and often begin near dawn. A bird roosting on a roof can leave droppings on tiles, decks, cars, or walkways. Foraging birds may pull apart flower beds, eat young plants, or scratch mulch away from roots. Groups crossing roads can slow traffic and increase the risk of collision. Breeding males may challenge reflective windows, polished vehicles, or other peacocks entering a defended area. These problems often grow when people provide food. A natural feeding area limits how many birds can gather in one place. Regular piles of grain, bread, or pet food remove part of that limit. Birds begin returning to the same yard at the same time each day. More adults remain close together, and more chicks may survive near the dependable food source. Noise, droppings, and damage then become concentrated around a few homes. Feeding can also change movement patterns. Birds may stop traveling between several natural foraging areas and instead remain near streets, houses, and parking lots. Management works best when an entire community responds in a similar way. One household may stop feeding, while another continues only a few doors away. The birds still receive enough food to remain concentrated. Local education can explain how feeding affects population size and conflict. Residents can protect young plants with barriers, cover loose soil, and remove outdoor pet food. Access to favored roofs or sheltered nesting corners may be reduced with harmless physical changes. Pruning can sometimes make a particular roost less attractive, although removing important trees without a wider plan may simply move the birds to a neighboring property. Capturing and relocating peafowl also has limits. Moved birds may attempt to return. New birds can occupy the empty area when food and roosts remain available. Relocation may spread conflict into another community or place captive bred birds into habitat where they cannot survive safely. Long-term management therefore focuses on the conditions supporting the population, including food, shelter, nesting success, and human tolerance. The consequences become more serious where Indian peafowl meet their endangered green relatives. Indian and green peafowl can interbreed. Their offspring may carry a mixture of body color, crest shape, train features, and other inherited traits. In captivity, such hybrids may be produced deliberately. Near wild green peafowl populations, the same mixing can interfere with conservation. A hybrid may resemble a green peafowl closely enough to make visual identification difficult. Later generations can carry Indian peafowl genes even when the bird's appearance seems mostly green. This process is called genetic introgression. It occurs when genes from one population enter another through repeated interbreeding. Conservation programs trying to protect green peafowl must therefore consider more than the number of birds present. They also need to protect the genetic history that makes the species distinct. Captive collections require accurate records. Released birds must be identified carefully. Introduced Indian peafowl near green peafowl habitat can create a problem that remains hidden inside later generations. Human movement has allowed Indian peafowl to thrive in places where they never evolved. That success reflects flexible feeding, tolerance of buildings, and the protection people often give attractive animals. The same success can produce noise, local damage, and genetic pressure on a rarer relative. Across the peafowl family, abundance has become deeply uneven. One species now lives beside people on several continents, while others depend on a shrinking number of forests, river valleys, and protected breeding grounds. The contrast across the peafowl family is now unusually sharp. Indian peafowl occupy a vast native range and have also been introduced to many regions beyond it. Their current global conservation category is least concern. This assessment reflects the species' broad distribution and large overall population, although local groups can still decline through habitat loss, poisoning, hunting, or conflict with farmers. Green peafowl face a very different future. Their global category is endangered. The species once ranged across a wide part of South and Southeast Asia, extending from northeastern India and Bangladesh, through Myanmar, Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Vietnam, southern China, and Java. Many populations have disappeared. Green peafowl are now possibly extinct in India and Bangladesh, and they have been lost from peninsular Malaysia. The remaining birds survive in scattered strongholds separated by farms, roads, towns, and heavily altered forest. Direct killing has contributed greatly to this decline. Large birds provide meat and are vulnerable to hunters because they return to regular feeding grounds, water sources, and roosting areas. Wire snares placed for other animals can also catch peafowl walking through the forest. Egg collection removes an entire breeding attempt before chicks hatch. Adult deaths have an especially strong effect when only a small number of breeding birds remain in an isolated area. Habitat conversion creates a second layer of pressure. A river valley can be cleared for crops. Dry forest may be replaced by plantations or settlements. Road construction opens previously quiet areas to vehicles, logging, and hunting. Repeated disturbance can cause birds to abandon display grounds even when some trees remain standing. A useful peafowl landscape contains several connected parts. Open ground gives adults space to forage and display. Dense vegetation conceals nests and young chicks. Tall trees provide night roosts, while rivers and seasonal pools supply dependable water. Safe routes allow birds to move among these resources without crossing large areas of exposed land. A small forest fragment may contain fruit and insects while lacking suitable nesting cover. Another patch may hold strong roost trees but sit too far from water during the dry season. Two healthy-looking groups can remain separated by a road, plantation, or settlement that birds rarely cross. Over time, isolation reduces the movement of individuals between populations. That movement carries genes. When it stops, a small group becomes more vulnerable to inbreeding, disease, local storms, and several poor breeding seasons in a row. Conservation, therefore, depends on connections across the landscape, as well as protection inside individual reserves. The Congo peafowl presents a different difficulty. Its current global category is near threatened, and the population is believed to be declining. The species lives only in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, mainly within lowland forest across the central Congo basin. Dense vegetation can hide a bird only a short distance away. Few roads reach many parts of the range, and long-term fieldwork can become difficult where political instability or armed conflict makes repeated surveys unsafe. Hunting and snares continue inside some forest areas. Logging, mining, and expanding agriculture remove habitat or bring more people into previously remote regions. Reliable population counts are hard to produce under these conditions. Researchers rarely stand in one place and count every Congo peafowl directly. Calls can reveal birds hidden behind vegetation, although a silent individual may remain undetected. Camera traps photograph animals passing along forest paths over weeks or months. Shed feathers and droppings provide evidence that birds have recently used an area. DNA collected from those samples can sometimes distinguish individuals or reveal relationships between populations. Knowledge from local hunters and forest communities helps identify places where birds are still encountered. Repeated visits allow researchers to separate a regularly occupied site from one containing only an old feather or an occasional wandering bird. Each method captures a different portion of the population. Together, they build a clearer picture than any single survey could provide. The family's unequal status has little connection to how beautiful each species appears. Conservation depends on range size, population trend, hunting pressure, breeding success, and movement between suitable habitats. The familiar Indian peacock remains visible in gardens and communities around the world. Its green relative has vanished from much of its former Asian range. The Congo peafowl can decline beneath a forest canopy, where few people outside the region ever see it. An open train now carries all of these scales at once. Its feathers depend on one healthy bird, while the courtship that preserves them depends on females, safe breeding grounds, and connected populations continuing across generations. A mature Indian peacock raises his train, and the full system gathers into one visible moment. Months earlier, living follicles beneath the skin began supplying each developing feather with blood, protein, and other nutrients. Keratin hardened as the upper tail coverts lengthened. More than 100 eye spots formed across feathers arranged at different heights, creating the broad curve of the fan. Shorter rectrices beneath the train provided support. Muscles near the tail lifted those firm feathers and carried the long coverts upward with them. What appears from the front as one surface is built from many separate parts, each attached to the same working body. Sunlight enters the feather's smallest branches. Inside the barbules, repeating arrangements of melanin rods, keratin, and air interact with wavelengths measured in billionths of a meter. Selected colors return toward the observer. A change in angle alters which waves arrive most strongly. Blue-green regions brighten as nearby bronze fades. Then the balance shifts again, when the male turns or the female takes a few steps. The peacock's position helps place useful light across the train. His display becomes more effective through the physical relationship among feather structure, sunlight, and the peahen's location. Muscular contractions then drive the true tail at roughly 25 to 26 cycles each second. Contact transfers this movement into the long coverts. Resonance allows feathers of different lengths to respond within a similar frequency range. Loose green barbs travel through wider movements, while the denser eye spot regions remain comparatively steady. Ordered markings appear suspended within a shimmering field. That vibration also moves air. Mechanical sound leaves the fan as rustling, pulses, and low-frequency energy. A peahen standing nearby can receive shifting color through her eyes and the rattle through her ears. Airflow may also bend the small crest feathers above her head. Experiments have shown that these crests respond mechanically to frequencies and air movements found in peafowl courtship, although their exact role in mating decisions remains open to further study. Her gaze provides clearer evidence of attention. From a distance, the large upper train can help reveal the male above grass or low vegetation. Closer inspection often shifts toward the lower fan, body, and movements near the ground. Different portions of the display perform their work at different distances. Female attention changes the biological outcome. A male receiving more mating opportunities leaves more descendants. Inherited traits connected with his train, color, behavior, and development can then appear more often in later generations. Across long periods of time, these small differences in reproductive success helped extend ordinary covering feathers into the enormous train seen today. Survival continued shaping the same process. A male still had to find food, avoid predators, reach a roost, and remain healthy enough to grow another train. The ornament expanded within those limits. Its folded form produces less resistance during daily travel. Strong legs support hours of walking. Broad wings lift the bird into trees. Annual molt removes worn feathers and begins another cycle of construction. The train belongs to one season of the animal's larger life. After mating, the peahen carries the reproductive work into a concealed ground nest. For roughly 4 weeks, she warms and turns the eggs. Newly hatched chicks leave the nest soon after drying and follow her toward food, water, and cover. Young males require several years and repeated molts before their own displays reach full adult form. Green peafowl follow a related path with different color shared more strongly between the sexes. Congo peafowl continue the lineage without the enormous eye-spotted fan. Their shorter display fits the reduced sight lines of dense Central African forest. These comparisons show how inheritance can preserve a basic peafowl body, while ecology and courtship reshape its visible details. The Indian peacock's train depends on every scale encountered along the way. A healthy landscape supplies food for feather growth and trees for roosting. Safe nesting cover allows peahens to raise young. Movement between populations keeps genes traveling through the species. When those connections weaken, even a spectacular display can disappear from a region. The fan begins to lower. Muscles relax, the true tail settles, and the long coverts fold together behind the body. Eye spots that filled a wide circle now overlap in a narrow bundle. Color remains within the microscopic structure, ready to brighten again when light reaches it from the proper angle. The peacock returns to the ground, where walking, feeding, preening, and reaching a safe roost will support everything required for another display. What closes behind him is the visible part of a much larger system, briefly folded while the ordinary work of life continues.